Alright guys, Darren from Honest Money and welcome back to another video. Now if you're thinking about selling your house in the near future, or maybe you're already in the process of selling your house, hopefully you're going to find this video useful, as I want to share with you some tips that will help you with the house selling process. Now I've moved house I think 4 times in the last 5 or 6 years, so all of the tips I'm going to give you in this video are based on real world experiences. So hopefully you guys will find them super useful. So let's jump straight into these tips, and tip number 1 is I want you to get the price right from the very beginning. I don't just go onto the market overpriced, because that will be more damaging to your property and your financials in the long term. I think research has actually shown that properties that are overpriced to begin with actually go on to sell for less than they would have done if they were priced accurately to begin with. So make sure you do your research, get at least 2 or 3 estate agents out, local estate agents that know the market well, and get some valuations from them, and also look at the sold house prices of some comparable properties that have sold recently in your area. I wouldn't necessarily recommend using the house price estimators or the house price indexes, as I don't think they're overly useful, but definitely getting local estate agents out and looking at sold house prices for me is the best way of getting the best idea of what your property may be worth. So the website I like to use to get sold house prices from is Rightmove, and I'm just going to show you an example on there briefly now. Now when you arrive on the Rightmove website, what I want you to do is to go onto house prices, click on that, and then choose sold house prices. Now I'm just going to pop in a random postcode that I just found on Google, so this isn't actually where I live. And then when you hit list view, it will bring up all of the properties that are sold within that postcode. So what I want you to do next is to adjust this filter. So I normally go to a quarter mile or a half a mile, depending on how dense the population is in that area. If there's lots of properties, you may only need quarter of a mile. If you're in the countryside, maybe you might need further afield. But let's say, for example, we're going to do quarter of a mile for now. I'm then going to change this to I only want properties that have sold in the last year. I might go to 2 years depending on what the market has been doing, but for now I'm going to do properties that have sold within the last year. And then property types, I'm going to choose detached property. So I want to compare my house versus lots of other detached properties, and then hopefully you'll be given a list of comparable properties that you can go through and see the exact price that they have sold for and when they actually sold. Now during this process, it is so important that you are honest with yourself about how your house actually compares to these examples. I know it's so easy to think that a house is always offering more than someone else's, but the more honest you are about your house, the more realistic the price you come up with will actually be. So Rightmove is the website that I use to get sold house prices, and a number of the estate agents will use Rightmove or similar portals to get the same sort of figures to actually give you a valuation as well. So hopefully between those estate agents and also doing your own research, you'll get an accurate idea of what your property may be worth. Okay, so the next thing I want you to look into doing is getting professional photography and also ensuring that you have an accurate floor plan with dimensions. I see so many poor listings on Rightmove with poor photography or without a floor plan. And with so many of us viewing houses for the first time via portals such as Rightmove, the photography and the floor plan are your most powerful tools in terms of trying to get someone to make a viewing to actually come and see your property. So make sure your estate agent can offer professional photography. What I like to do is look through their existing listings, and if they've got poor photography there, that's probably a good idea of what they can do with your property. So whenever you're looking at any agent, always look at existing listings that they've got. And with regards to the floor plan, make sure it's accurate and get them to add the dimensions. I'm just going to jump back to Rightmove quickly to see if I can find an example of what I'm talking about. So what I'm going to do on Rightmove is use the same postcode and see what properties are actually for sale at the moment. So if we do within quarter of a mile and choose houses and click find properties, and I'll see if I can find some examples of good photography and good floor plans. It looks like we've actually got quite a good comparison here. So this first one here, I quite like the main photo. It looks like it's been taken with a wide angle lens, so it gives you a really good idea of where the property is located and how it's situated. Also got a nice blue sky. It's not too oversaturated, so it doesn't look too fake. The property below, their main photo, firstly, they've got 2 cars in it, which they could have easily moved. These guys here, they do have cars in the shot, but they probably couldn't do much about cars parked on the other side of the road. But if these guys were at their own house, they could have got these cars out of the way. There's also a massive shadow here, so this photo could have been taken at a different angle or a different time of day to make this present in a much better fashion. Now, if we take a look at their floor plans, let's see how these compare. So this is actually, on the face of it, looks like quite a good floor plan, because it's got the names of the rooms and it's got the dimensions, and hopefully you'd assume it is accurate. So I quite like that floor plan. I think they've done a good job. Let's see how this one with the good photography checks out. Actually, in contrast to the photography, this floor plan is actually quite poor. For me, this isn't a very good floor plan as it doesn't give you the dimensions there. If I want to actually see the dimensions of the room, I have to manually refer back to the listings. That's providing, of course, that the dimensions are included in the listing, which they are, but still it's an additional step that the viewer would have to do. So you want a floor plan like this with lots of detail, but preferably you want photography more along this lines with a nice wide angle lens with good lighting, with a blue sky, even if they have to Photoshop the blue sky in. Make sure it's not too oversaturated, like I say, make sure it doesn't look too fake. But just a few tips there on photography and floor plans. Now this next point is something you'll probably see in a number of these tips for selling your house, and is that they want you to declutter and stage your house for selling. And I completely agree with that. Whenever I've sold a house, we've always tidied up quite a bit. Also, when you move house, you normally chuck away an awful lot. So speed up that process, do it at the very beginning, hire a skip, get rid of a lot of that stuff before you actually start doing your viewings, because your house will be a lot clearer and it will look a lot better in the photography, and also when you come to do the viewings. Also, if you've got any real kind of what you might say Marmite features in the house, like sometimes you might have a feature wall which you absolutely love, but you have to be honest about it. You know, if you've got a big pink wall in your lounge, you have to say to yourself, will everyone like this? Will it put people off? Now, the majority of buyers are of course going to decorate the house to their own styles when they move in, but there are a small section of buyers who can't see past decor. So something as simple as painting over one wall, then maybe consider doing it. I wouldn't recommend a change in bathroom suites or kitchens because you probably wouldn't make that back in the sale. But certainly if you do have some Marmite features which are easily removed or can be hidden easily, then consider doing that, as it should help with selling your house. Okay, so this next point is something that I had real world experience with, and that is accommodating viewings as swiftly as possible. Now, when I was buying a house a few years ago, there was a house that myself and my wife really liked. However, they weren't allowing any viewings for 2 weeks. Now at the time we were really excited, we really wanted to see the house, but they would not let us see it for at least 2 weeks as they wanted to do an open house. Now as a buyer, that was super frustrated, and actually during those 2 weeks we found an alternative property. So by the time that viewing came round, a potential buyer had actually moved on and found a different property. So if someone wants to view your house, don't make them wait too long. Try and get them in as soon as possible and try and be as accommodating as possible, because it will help build some rapport with that buyer, and it also will stop them finding an alternative property that could come on the market in the next few days or in the next couple of weeks. Now this next tip for selling your house certainly isn't for everyone, and I completely understand why people would not want to do this, but if you feel confident about doing it, I would consider doing your own viewings. Now I've always done my own viewings when selling a house, as I believe I know the most about my property and I'm able to answer any question that potential buyers may have. However, I completely understand that people may not want to do this, and if you do have an estate agent doing your viewings, make sure that you're available for questions, but I would recommend staying out of the way. When you're doing a viewing, you want to have a few people there as possible. So for example, when I was doing viewings, I would do the viewing, my wife and my dog would go out, and it would just be me in the house. So when someone come around, there was no pressure on them. I could let them around the house, I could show them without people being in the way, and then I'd also let them go around the house on their own at the end and just be about for any questions. And it's the same if the estate agent's doing the viewing, just stay out of the way, and then at the end be about for any questions. The last thing you want to do is someone arrive at the house and there's the estate agent, yourself and your wife, and there's 3 of you all of a sudden standing around this one person who's viewing your property. It might make them feel slightly uncomfortable. So stay out of the way, be available for questions, and consider doing your own viewings if it's something that you'd feel confident about doing. So whether you decide to do the viewings yourself or you decide to ask the estate agents to do them for you, I would still recommend coming up with a list of frequently asked questions that you may receive during the house buying process. For example, people may ask you about the neighbours, they may ask you about the quality of local schools, and also they may ask you about any recent work. So really try to highlight anything you've done to improve the property recently. You know, if you've had the kitchen done or the bathrooms done, or maybe you've had the boiler changed or some recent boiler servicing, focus on all of the selling points that will help sell your house and show it in the most positive light possible. So hopefully if things go well, at some point you will receive an offer from a potential buyer, or potentially multiple offers from multiple buyers. Now when this happens, what I want you to do is try to remove all emotion from the equation, especially if you get a low offer. I don't want you to be offended. I've seen buyers before get offended by low offers. Now in many instances, people that do offer low will be willing to increase their offer, so don't get offended, don't cut them out just because they've started off with a low offer. I know whenever I've bought a house, I've always lowballed to start with and worked my way up. Also, it's very important to consider the buyer's situation. Are they the right buyer for you? For example, cash buyers always sound like the best buyers, but you may not have found where you're moving to yet. So maybe you don't want someone who's a cash buyer and is super eager to buy your house, because you want to take a few weeks or months to actually find the property you want to move into, and you don't want lots of pressure from a cash buyer. So in that instance, a chain buyer might be the way to go. However, it might be the case that you want to move really quickly, and someone that offers with a 4 or 5 man chain, you may choose to ignore their offer and stay on the market to try to find the buyer that is right for you. So think about your own individual circumstances. How much much of a rush are you in to sell and move, and also look at the buyer's situation, and then consider all of those when deciding whether that buyer is right for you. Now this next point I could probably make an entire video on, comparing traditional estate agents with online estate agents, but what I'm going to do in this video is just share with you my experiences from working with both. I have bought and sold with both types of agents. However, there are many online estate agents that I haven't worked with, and that same applies to traditional estate agents. So the advice I'm going to give you here is only based on my own experiences. Now from what I've seen in the past is online agents are definitely cheaper than traditional estate agents. However, they both generally have access to the same portals. So providing your property is listed on Rightmove and other big portals like that, you should in theory get in front of pretty much the same amount of people. So online estate agents are generally cheaper. However, traditional estate agents usually have better local knowledge and are usually more involved during the process. They're more often going to be offering you to do the viewings for you, whereas online estate agents, that might be something you have to pay extra for. Also, my experience of online estate agents has been they're very good at selling a house, but they're not very good after that point, whereas traditional estate agents are more involved post-sales. So keep that in mind as well. If you're not someone that wants to be too involved with the process, maybe a traditional estate agent will be better, whereas an online agent may get your house sold, but then once the house is sold, the process, the conveyancing process and everything that's involved onwards from that is a lot more complex, and some of the online estate agents aren't very good with the support they provide. So that's been my experience with online versus traditional, and I quite happily would use either again, depending on the property that I was selling and what I was trying to achieve with that sale, and also what I was buying at the time as well. I would also recommend having your own solicitor ready to go. So when the offer comes in, if you do accept that offer, you can get straight down to your solicitor and get things moving. There's nothing worse than having an offer accepted and having to wait 1 to 2 weeks for the buyer to then instruct the solicitor and actually get things moving. So make sure you find a solicitor in advance. I would recommend finding a local independent solicitor because there's lots of paperwork to sign, so you can pop to their offices and sign that paperwork. I'm not a huge fan of using solicitors that the estate agents recommend. I've done that once before and had a very bad experience. So going forward, I've always used my own independent local solicitors that I can pop down to if there's any issues, and I know they are always fighting with my best interest in heart rather than thinking about what's going on with the estate agent as well. Now this final point, and this isn't something that I would recommend for everyone, is that I want you to consider exchanging disposable contacts with a potential buyer. So usually when someone buys your house, there'll be an initial viewing, and if they do buy your house, they'll probably want to come back for an additional viewing. Now at that point, sometimes what I've done before is share with them some disposable contact details. And the reason that I recommend this is the house buying and selling process is very stressful, and there are many moving parts, and sometimes it's better to just be able to send a message to your buyer directly to speak to them rather than having to go via the estate agent and the solicitor, who sometimes can get things a little bit confused. Of course, keep anything official through the official routes, but sometimes when there's a quick question or if the estate agent or the solicitor has caused an issue, sometimes it's easier to resolve things by going directly to the buyer. So consider exchanging contact details if it's a sort of buyer that you're happy exchanging contact details with. And finally, I have a bonus tip, and that is that I want you to be proactive. Buying and selling a house can be very stressful, especially if you leave it to other people and expect them to take care of things for you. You need to be proactive, you need to be on top of your estate agent, and you need to be on top of your solicitor. Don't trust anyone and don't expect anyone to do anything just because they should. Always keep on top of them. Whenever I've been buying or selling a house, I've always chased all of the relevant people on a weekly basis to stay on top of it. With selling and buying a house, it's very much a case of he who shouts the loudest gets the attention. So make sure you're keeping on top of your estate agent, keep on top of your solicitor, and keep that chain moving. You don't want to wait 3 or 4 weeks at a time and find out that nothing has happened, which is what happens all the time when buying or selling a house. So I hope you guys have found those house selling tips useful. If you have, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment, just scroll down and hit that like button. Also, if you want to see more videos on house buying or house selling, let me know in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.